Hello everyone, welcome to another video from Fantasy Football Scout. Apologies if you've been waiting in the lobby for an hour. Ted and I had agreed to change the time to 11 o'clock and I forgot to update YouTube. And that's not like me again to do something wrong, but here we are. I'm with Ted. How are you, Ted?
I'm really good, mate. Yeah, I'm excited for the FPL season. It's only a week to go, isn't it? And it feels like such a long build up, but we're finally there. So much has changed. So I'm keen to lock in this team. Ooh, maybe lock in is a bit strong, isn't it? Because things change so quickly in FPL, don't they? But yeah, keen to reveal this.
Yeah, I mean we've been getting a bit of stick, and I've been getting a bit of stick for the name team reveal, right? Because it's a bit premature, shall we say? Like 2 or 3 weeks ago to be doing team reveals, but we've been getting the likes in, you've been getting the subs, so clickbait works. That's what I've learned from all of this, and that's what it's all about at the end of the day. But it does feel like this week the team reveal tag might be a little bit more accurate because I think what we're getting now are teams I think are closer to what we're going to end up with. Maybe 1 or 2 changes, but I know for my own team I think I'm pretty much there. How set are you with the team that we're going to show, do you reckon, or do you reckon there'll be some more changes?
I'm pretty set. I'm not sure the big signings like Lukaku coming in are going to change my methodology too much. Maybe the likes of Simicast becoming a 4.0 option might change my mind with the bench, but I probably won't touch him just because I think it takes up a Liverpool spot. But little details like that might change it. I might change Foster to the substitute Brighton goalkeeper now.
Oh, wow. Big moves.
I know, shocking.
Steady.
But yeah, I hadn't even heard of that Sherpen guy. But he was priced at 4.5 million, which was super confusing. So, but he's apparently injured or something. So maybe I'll switch to the Brighton goalkeeper. But yeah, otherwise, I'm pretty set on this. Spreading the funds, no Bruno. Let's get into it, shall we?
Yeah, we will. Yeah. Just to talk about just mention the Brighton goalkeeper. He's signed. He's quite a good young goalkeeper. I think. Like the reports about him and stuff are that I think he was at Ajax and he was like excelling there, but he's definitely back up. Like he's. I mean, Potter said he's not going to come in. So I think Steele, people going with Steele are probably getting are getting the third choice goalkeeper unless he goes out on loan or something like that. So, you know me, I've got to talk about the Brighton goalkeepers. I just want to give a quick introduction to you, Ted, because you do a brilliant series on Fantasy Scout every week for us called Ted Talks. And I just urge anyone who's watching this, if they like you, if they don't like you, don't watch it. But if they do like you, then give it a watch. It's brilliant. I mean, the graphics and stuff you do are, they put me to shame.
Thank you very much. I mean, yeah, it's stats based, so it'll be quite a lot of numbers. But I think try and just consolidate all of the numerical information into something that's digestible for people that don't really want to spend too much poring over spreadsheets and all that sort of stuff. So hopefully it's appealing to most people, but completely understand if it's not everyone's cup of tea.
Digestible stats is how I describe it. It's presented really nicely. You're getting guests on each week. Had Luke on the one you did over the weekend. So yeah, just watch out for that. That's coming every week, every Monday that'll be uploaded. So yeah, check those out. And just before we get into your team, I wanted to get your rank history up because your rank history is quite interesting in the sense that so you started playing in 2011. You finished 1 million. We won't talk too much about that. You then, you really knuckled down in the second season, finished 2.5 million. Not so good. And then you got things a little bit better. So 185,000. So you're climbing up. And then what the hell happened in 2018-19? You finished 63rd in the world. Unbelievable.
Incredible stuff. Right, let me caveat this rank history hugely. So I think those first 2 seasons were basically I was egged on by a couple of mates to go on, set up an FPL team, and it was basically a zombie team for the whole season. So I didn't touch it for those first 2. And then I got into it because the league I was in, it was like some restricted format of Telegraph, which was practically a draft league, ended. And I just switched to FPL for a work mini league, got really into it. And I read something which said, you need to build up your team value for the first season, and you're going to be like full of 11 Harry Kanes by the second half of the season. So I foolishly followed that advice. And I mean, 185k for that season wasn't too bad, but yeah, it was definitely the wrong piece of advice. And then I started creating content the following season and had that insane 63rd in the world, which was which was incredible.
So were you close? Were you close to like the top 10, or was it like a late push into the top 100?
Oh God! I mean, you're testing my memory, but I
Oh
think
come
I
on!
was.
You've got to remember your 63rd place finish. I'd have like recorded done one of those like Amazon documentaries about it. You know.
I think I got a bit scared when I got up there so high. I started playing a bit timid, rather than going for the win, which I definitely should have, because I was a bit of a newbie to the whole FPL world, how ranks really define how good you are. And I was going, well, okay, it doesn't really matter if I'm top 10K and below the 63rd or go for a first place finish. I didn't really understand. So I just thought, 63rd, this is pretty good. I was winning my mini leagues. So I just sort of consolidated and played sensibly.
So you wouldn't do that now then? Now you would properly kick on, would you? Or try to kick on?
Oh, 100%. Like winning FPL would be amazing. So I think you've got to throw caution to the wind in those scenarios and properly go for it. Yeah. But I do remember the way I played in that season. And I think the last 4 seasons that I've played a different strategy in each one, which is a terrible thing to do in hindsight, because the season definitely conforms to a certain way of playing. But it has to go your way, right? For things to click into place. So the only way to get a really good rank is to play consistently and hope that the season falls into line. But anyway, the 63rd place, I was super into the underperforming, overperforming thing. And I was going, right, okay, well, if I bring in some underperforming players, they're surely going to explode, aren't they? But the problem is that underperforming even means that player is just rubbish and they don't have the ability that other players do compared to what's expected of them. Or it means that they will have a really good next run of games. So I think I just got lucky, maybe. I remember Rondon being my player of the season because he just absolutely ran away with it. Him and Jimenez, they were amazing for me. No one wanted to bring in Rondon because it's Rondon, right? Who wants Rondon on their team? So no, it was a good season. I'm going to try and emulate it this season. I'm going to try and forecast some teams that are going to improve after having a struggling last 6 game weeks or something.
Interesting.
And see where it goes. Yeah.
Yeah, Jimenez killed me that season. I didn't own him at all for the entire season, and it was just that the opposite of Rondon, like the player who you love and everyone else seems to hate. I just didn't like him, and just everyone had him, and he just killed me every single week. And I just refused. The more he scored, the more I refused to get him, and yeah, it's definitely a weakness to my game. So how do you typically start in FPL? Do you normally start sort of fairly strongly, or do you tend to get off like me to absolutely terrible starts and have to kind of claw your way back up to something respectable?
Yeah, I think typically I try and go as template as possible. But I think I'm moving away from that this season because more of a well-being thing. I just like to support my players. I like to ignore effective ownership because it annoys me. So I think the Fernandez thing is just, I don't want to own a player that's always going to have over 100% effective ownership every week because of the disproportionate number of Man United fans captaining him. It might not happen this season, especially with the lack of the drip feed of games. And it might not be that much of an issue, but I just didn't enjoy owning him. And I think it'd be more fun to try and beat Fernandez plus Buendia or Fernandez plus Sarr or something with 2 9 million options. I think there's an abundance of them this season. So I'm taking that route. In the answer to your initial question, I think just try and keep it solid. Just try not to do anything completely crazy and just pick proven FPL players that have Premier League experience. And that's what I'm going to go with.
Okay, so kind of going template, but going against Fernandez, the kind of most template player there is. I like it.
Yeah.
So I'm having a few issues with my camera. I think I'm just being a bit OCD about it. I just can't get it straight, and it's driving me insane. So if you watch back at this, then it's me just messing around with the camera, and I apologise for anyone that's. My camera's it's on like this little webcam stand. It's like a little bit of a tilt, and so everything looks misaligned, but I mean, no one cares about that. Right, anyway, no one cares about that. Let's talk about your actual team then, and come on to that. So, we've got your team up on the screen, and your team is Sanchez in goal. It's Trent, it's Shaw, and it's John Stones at centre-back. It's Mohamed Salah, Son, my old mate Mahrez, Rafinha, Barnes, and then Ings and Antonio up front. So we're going to start at the back. You talk about being fairly template. You've got the most template goalkeeper starting in goal. What are your feelings about Sanchez? How do you think Brighton are going to get on defensively this season?
I think it's an interesting one. I've chopped and changed with Bachmann quite a lot, actually. I'm definitely going to go with a 4.5 goalkeeper because I think they're just the best value.
Not tempted by Martinez, him?
No, I think 5.5 is just slightly too much to pay for a goalkeeper. And there's always a chance that Villa regress a little bit and don't keep as many clean sheets. Yes, Martinez is great for save points, but I think 4.5, Sanchez could equally have a great season then, and Bachmann could do, depending on how Watford adapt. But in terms of your question, Brighton, I think Sanchez he's not a great goalkeeper compared to the rest of the Premier League, but he was certainly considerably... I'm sorry. If you look at the numbers, he conceded more than was expected, and there's plenty of goalkeepers that prevent more than is expected from them. And so I think he's not as good technically, but he did keep 10 clean sheets in like 27 games, which is very, very decent return. But I think that's more of a reflection about how solid Brighton are defensively, their possession game. So I think there's a couple of injuries to worry about. Lamptey, Dan Burn, not 100% sure how they'll set up. You'll probably be able to answer that better than me. But in terms of their stats, they were statistically the third best defence last season. Yes, we're a little bit worried with Brighton about how they underperform going forward and at the back. But I think underperforming at the back was probably an element of Matt Ryan, who had a terrible first 10 game weeks last season. Yep. So Sanchez for me is going to be one of those keepers that doesn't make many saves because Brighton are a possession team, but he'll probably keep a few clean sheets. And so it's like paying 4.5 for like an Edison, where
that's a hell of a comparison.
I don't know. Yeah, I guess it's a bit contrived, but Man City aren't going to concede many shots, and Man City have loads of good players, so they're probably going to get the bonus. Whereas Brighton probably aren't going to set the world alight, so Sanchez might be more in contention for the bonus points, and that's partly why I'm going for him. If I was a betting man, I'd say I'd go Bachmann and then go. They had a strong defensive performance in the Championship. Therefore, they're probably going to be better than the other promoted teams. He's going to have lots of saves, opportunities, might keep clean sheets. He's probably okay. But at the end of the day, we don't know how Watford are going to adapt to the Premier League. They lost 3-1 to Palace at the weekend. And, I guess, take it with a pinch of salt. It's pre-season. But it just threw me a little bit. And I want to go with someone that I actually watched last season and I sort of knew about. So I think Sanchez is the one for me.
What you've done there is, as a Brighton fan, you've managed to insult me and compliment my team in equal measure. I mean, comparing Sanchez to Edison and Brighton to Man City, and then straight away in the next bat saying you're not expecting them to put up many trees and and they're not really that good. But I mean, I do kind of agree with what you're saying. I mean, Brighton don't concede many big chances, which means the shots Sanchez tends to face are often outside the area or kind of weaker shots. I mean, we have a tendency to let them in, which is a problem. But in terms of generally the shots we concede are of poor quality. I was talking to Mark about this the other day because he's in his current draft. He's got Martinez in. He's paying the 5.5. And I worked out that if you averaged out Sanchez's points, he'd have got about 141 points last season. And this is for a Brighton team, which I think massively underperformed on the stats, like you said, third best defence. And he predicted Martinez to come away with 150 to 160 points. So I said to him, is it really worth $1 million in your goalkeeper just to get in a goalkeeper who's going to get, you're predicting 10, 15 points extra? I don't think it is. I think 4 or 5 goalkeepers have always been the way I've played it. And I think the exceptions to that have been, we've seen a few over the years. I mean, we had Martinez last season. He would have been a factor even if he was more than the 4.5 he started with. We've seen De Gea before when he made like 13 saves against Arsenal and just somehow kept keeping clean sheets. And we sit with Pope as well. So I think Pope is the real exception because he plays for a defensive first team and he hoovers up the bonus points. I just wonder with Villa now putting all of this emphasis in attack, whether we're going to see less clean sheets, more attacking returns split across the players, and maybe less bonus for Martinez. But
It's super interesting.
It is.
The home and away aspect comes back this season because of the fans coming back. So how do you anticipate that's going to affect Brighton? Are they better at home more so, or is it a spread?
We had one of the, I think, because I remember Mark set up a graphic about home and away, and we are a better team at home. Like, there's no doubt about it in terms of the stats. I'm not sure if the results really bore that out, but in terms of possession, in terms of the chance we create, in terms of the goal attempts we concede, that kind of thing, we are much better at the MX. I think we're going to see a big shift this season with the home advantage massively returning. I think we're going to see it go even more the other way of the home teams having even more of an advantage than we've seen previously. It's crazy last season. I mean, teams like Burnley and Everton just did absolutely terribly at home, and I'm not expecting that to carry on. So I think Brighton at home are going to be a real good, a real good team with defence the focus, because I just don't trust the attack. Trossard, Mopé, Welbeck. There's talks we're going to sign Edouard from Celtic, but now it looks like Roma and some other clubs are kind of getting interested, and I think we delayed a bit too much on that. So yeah, long story short, I think Brighton defence is the way to go, and I think the two choices at 4.5 are Bachmann or Sanchez. Like you mentioned, Bachmann for the saves, Sanchez for the greater chance of clean sheets.
It's interesting because Brighton's better fixtures, I'd say, are the 3 away games in the first 6. And for me, they're top of the fixture ticker. But Burnley away, Brentford away, and Crystal Palace away, they're their best fixtures. The home games are Watford at home, Everton at home, and Leicester at home. So it's an interesting one. I think if you look at it all together, those first 6 are excellent. And I think they've got a good chance of keeping clean sheets in maybe 2 or 3 of them. But it's just interesting, if they're better at home and they've got the better games away, then it sort of does strike a little bit of fear in me. But I think all in all, it'll probably be all right.
Yeah, the fixtures to me don't actually seem as good as what people are making out. I'm a bit concerned that we might not. There's quite a lot of expectation on us to do quite well, and I'm a bit worried that we might not. But yeah, we'll see. I think I'm going to back Sanchez. I think I want a goalkeeper who's a bit of a set and forget. I mean, I'm looking at the wild card playing it around 7 or 8, but if I can avoid it, then I will. So I don't just want a goalkeeper for the first kind of 5 weeks. So yeah, I like Sanchez. Anyway, we've just done the goalkeeper. We've been talking about 15 minutes. Let's move on. Defence. So, I mean, Alexander, Arnold and Shaw, I mean, about as template as it gets. I don't think we need to say a huge amount about them. Have they been in kind of every draft that you've had, or have either of them dropped out?
Yeah, more or less. I think Alexander Arnold probably becomes a better attacking option if Robertson's out for the start of the season.
More set pieces.
More set pieces. I was chatting with Luke on Twitter earlier, and he was saying, he made a good point that teams might adapt strategically to try and sort of double up on Trent in open play, which is a good point. But I think more or less it doesn't detract from me from owning him. And I think, as you say, he's going to be a more set pieces. And Liverpool arguably might be better defensively. They might keep it tighter with a Milner or a Tsimikas at the back. So I think, yeah, Alexander Arnold is just far and away the best attacking defender in the game. The stats proved that last season. Yep. So absolutely no-brainer for me. And Shaw is just one of those interesting ones that he was so lowly owned at the start of last season. He only got 1 assist in the first half of the whole season, which probably explains that. But then he got 5 attacking returns in the second half. He removed all doubt about Alex Telles by just nailing his starting position, and then had a fantastic Euros campaign. And you could see the not Community Shield, his game against Everton. You could just see the balls he was nailing in were just absolutely, they were so much better than last season. So I think he's improving.
This is the pre-season game a few days ago. They won 4-0.
Yes, exactly. He's improving rapidly, and I'm not surprised that he's the most owned player in the game. 51%, I think it was. But yeah, I'm happy to own him. 100%.
Would it surprise you to say that I have not had Luke Shaw in a single one of my drafts?
Yeah, I mean, arguably, if you're concerned about his ribs, but I mean, I think we played a couple of days ago, so they're clearly okay. It's clearly okay, but yeah, that does surprise me. Who are you favouring instead of Shaw?
Well, at the moment, I've got Trent, I've got Chilwell, and I've got Soufal. And
to be fair, I like those picks.
I mean the Leeds game I think is a tough one for United. I think Varane's going to come in, and I want to see how they kind of settle with a new centre back partnership. I mean, Shaw is an absolutely fantastic player, and good fixtures as well. I don't blame. I'm not saying he's a bad pick. I'm just looking at that ownership and thinking, kind of the opposite of effective ownership and thinking he's a player who everyone's going to have, and his attacking returns last season, despite playing as well as he did, weren't that amazing in terms of the assists he got and goals and stuff. So I'm looking at Chilwell as a wing back. I'm looking at Soufal, who's a bit cheaper, and Trent, and thinking maybe I can kind of, be a bit different and get away with it there. But having Chilwell allows me to drop down to someone like Shaw, or
I agree.
The player that you haven't got, who is massively template, who is Luca Dean. You've gone for John Stones instead at 5.5, which is interesting. Do you think he'll play in the first game?
So I had Dean before the weekend, and I'm letting preseason sort of affect me too much because that Man United game really did shock me. But I did have an element of doubt about Everton. I actually had Calvert-Lewin and Dean in my previous tinker, so I removed them both. And the reason why I did it was because I remember how they finished at the end of last season. Yes, they were great at the start of the season, but I think there is an element, some logic to say that irrelevant they've got a new manager, they probably will continue with that end of season form. And even though they've got great fixtures, I'm not sure I can go through having double Everton again. And Luca Dean, he's a good option on paper, especially with some of the home fixtures. He was playing Norwich and Burnley and Southampton in the first 6 at home, which is very decent. But I'm just not sure how they're going to line up. Richarlison's not back. Calvert-Lewin had a knock. I'm not sure how they're going to line up, and Pickford just scares me. So I've gone away from Dean, and I've put John Stones in. And the reason, because I think that he's going to slot straight back in. He's back in training today. Ake didn't have a very good game at the weekend.
No, he was poor, wasn't he? Gave away the penalty.
He was poor, and Laporte is out of favour. And he prefers that left centre-back position where Diaz normally occupies. So I think Stones is just... I know no one's really nailed in a Pep team, but I think Stones plays the majority of the games. And I think he only needs one week to slot back in. It's not like he's coming in fresh in a new team, like Sancho is, for example, and has to adapt to their way of playing. He's played the whole of last season. Only needs 1 week of training for me, and he'll be back in. And, if he doesn't play against Spurs, it's not the end of the world. I think he comes in for Norwich for sure. I've got Amati, who...
Well, I was going to say, let's come to your bench quickly, because I mean you've got a couple of risks here, right? You've got Stones, you've got Mahrez. We don't really know who can have. You've got Danny Ings, for example, who could get injured at any moment. You've got a couple of players here who I would term risky, at least for kind of the first few weeks of the season. Your bench, and I'm going to be blunt here, is embarrassing. Like, you've got Foster, you've got Amati, you've got Obafemi, and you've got Omar Bembadeli. There's no guarantee that any of those players are going to be regular starters. Leicester in the market for a centre-back. Obafemi's, might get more minutes now that Ings has gone, but they're probably going to sign a new striker. And Omar Bembadeli's been playing pre-season, but hasn't been first choice for Norwich, so we don't know what's going to happen.
What was that last one again?
Omar Bembadeli.
Oh, just love that.
Is that right?
Yeah, I guess so. I just love that you went... Oh, whatever.
Omo Bambadeli. I think that's quite good. Quite a good.
I think you're adding a B in there. I think it's Omo Bambadeli. Nailed it.
Oh, that does sound better.
Your point is,
despite your pronunciation, don't change the subject. Your bench is terrible. Are you not a bit worried that you're going to have to dip into that and not get anything out of it?
Yeah, for sure. This is definitely the weak point in my team. The bench is poor, and I think Amati probably will start at centre-back. I think if indeed he starts at centre-back instead, then probably weakens that team. And Amati did okay. So I think
he had a good game. Yeah.
So I'm sort of confident. I think typically, depending on the strength of your first 11 and how likely they are to start, you probably only need one bench option. You probably can get away with that. So I am risking it a lot with Amati because there's no guarantee that he plays. But if he does, he's a fantastic option. And
if you're getting a 4 million Leicester starting back, for a prolonged period, then obviously it's brilliant. I guess the issue is that Brendan Rodgers has said categorically we're light at centre back, and he likes to play with 3 centre backs anyway, to push like Pereira up and Castagna. Bertrand's in there as well. Hasn't got Fuchs anymore to cover. Wes Morgan's gone. I think it's almost certain that they're going to go out and buy another centre back. And I guess has Amati done enough to stay in the team? I thought he was great against City. I thought he had a really, really strong game. Mahrez couldn't get past him, for example. He was brilliant.
I mean, fingers crossed he does, because that's my saving grace. But yeah, the other two, nightmare. I might have to take the plunge and put in Tsimikas, but there's no guarantee that he plays. Milner probably plays. I don't know. Omar Bamidele, yes. I think he was starting pre-season for Norwich, so I mean, there's a chance that he plays. But yeah, Obafemi definitely becomes less of a good option once. I think it's conjecture that Armstrong from Blackburn is potentially signing for Southampton. So if that move goes through, then Obafemi becomes a non-option. And I think this is probably the downside of playing 3-5-2. If you play 3-4-3, that 4.5 option, you can fill it with Gibbs White or
Brownhill
from Burnley. Yeah,
Gilmore as well at 4-5.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's a few slightly better options. I think there's it's very rare to find a 4-5 striker who plays. I mean, we had Anachibi a few seasons ago. That's about as good as it gets. I think he did all right. I mean, Harry Kane. Harry Kane was 4-5, wasn't he, when he first came and broke into the league? That wasn't a bad one.
So I think but the highlights are I'm just going to be basically going into the first few game weeks going, please everyone play, and I think that's probably a bit naive, but I'm just going to go with it.
Well, okay. So coming away from your bench, I mean, that's the main weakness of your team. I mean, the players that we're going to talk about now. I mean, there isn't a weakness, I don't think, here. I mean, you've got Salah in midfield. You've got Son. So you're starting with Son. You've got Mahrez. We'll have a good old chat about him in a sec. Rafinha's there and Barnes. So. But you've got a couple of, I'd say, punts here. I mean, Mahrez is low ownership, quite popular on Twitter, but very low ownership overall in the game. Barnes, absolutely fantastic. Again, Community Shield, looks like he's over that injury. I think he's nailed to start in that Wolves game. I've got him as well. I think he's a great differential option. And Son. So, Son is in the title of this stream. I know a few people, so Mark and Luke, for example, are thinking of starting with someone and then switching to Son when the fixtures get better. You've got him straight in for game week 1, and you've got a clash with Stones as well. What's your thinking there? Is that just because you don't want to make a transfer game week 2, or do you think Son's going to do all right against City? What's the plan?
I think it's a bit both. I did see the logic about starting with the likes of Havertz for Crystal Palace and then switching to Son. I think that's probably a decent way if you want to be attacking, but I'm setting up this team for the long haul. I don't want to book in transfers. I don't want to plan ahead too much because things change so rapidly in FPL. And I mean, Son is just a machine. Like, I looked up his numbers against the top 6, which includes Arsenal and Tottenham, which may not be top 6 anymore. But in the top 6, he returned in 80% of his games. Against the bottom 14, he returned in 75% of his games. So consistent. I mean, those numbers are incredible. But the fact is, he could easily get a return against Man City. There's no question. Yes, it will hurt my clean sheet if Stones plays, but we're going to get these clashes throughout the season. Why not get it over with in the first game? And then Son has a run of 3 great fixtures. Who's he? Wolves, Watford and Palace. Yes, yeah. Captaincy option in game week 3 at home to Watford. And he's a great price point. Because I don't have Fernandes. So if I want to be flexible about getting Lukaku, I can swap Antonio down to Tony and get Lukaku in if he's 11 million, for example. Sorry, that's complete nonsense. Antonio up to Lukaku and then a 6.5, let's say Buendia instead of Son. So it just allows me to be flexible. Also, I really like the price points between 8 and 10 million. So you've got the Grealish, you've got Sancho, you've got Havertz, you've got Mahrez, who I've already got. But having that 10 million player allows me to easily, in one transfer, move to someone that I think might be a good shout after game week 4.
Yep. Yeah, I like it. I mean, and like you said, I mean, City were poor in the Community Shield. I thought they didn't look. They look like they just all got back from their holidays, which they have. I think most of them already have. They put in a couple of young players who didn't really impress. I think it's going to take them a few weeks at least to kind of get back to it and get their rhythm back, because they just look completely kind of out of sorts. So I think there's an opportunity for Spurs there. I think, there's so much negativity around Spurs at the moment. Nuno hasn't exactly had the biggest kind of fanfare about him. Third choice manager coming in, managing the club, quite defensive and not too much buzz around him. The whole Kane saga going on, but there's some encouraging signs. Their pre-season's been pretty decent. Son's been scoring and playing well. He signed a new contract, playing up front. They've just signed this new defender from Atlanta. They're in talks to sign this Inter Milan striker. Like, I don't know. It feels like there's the tide is turning a little bit. And I think if Spurs can get a result at home to City in the first week, then it might, just win some of the fans over, and they might kick on and do quite well. So I think it's a big game for them, I think.
100%, and it could go either way for sure. I probably have City favourites to win it, but I think regardless, Son is just such a good player, conversion-wise, that he could just easily get something.
I think he's the best finisher in the league. I've said it for a couple of seasons now. I can think of probably him and Kane really. If you've got any player who's through on goal, who you're backing to score, is one of those two. I'd back Son. I think Son, he's so clinical with the goals he scores.
Completely agree with that. I think the fact if Kane doesn't move, Son just, they have such a good partnership. It makes Son such a good option. I know they've signed this guy Martinez.
They haven't signed him yet. They're in talk, 660 million-ish.
Potentially, whether he does sign, I don't think it makes Son less of an option at all. I think Son's done incredibly well out on the left wing. Whether he plays striker is just irrelevant, and whether he's on penalties, I think is if he's on penalties, it's an added string to his bow. But I think he just does well regardless. So I'm very happy to own him, and I don't see that Man City game as a complete what's the word irrelevance.
Yeah, well, I definitely don't think it's a gimme for City. I think if they were playing them game week 4 or 5, I think we're going to see a very different City side. But I definitely think in the first few weeks, I mean, even Norwich in game week 2, I think Norwich will have the buzz of having just been promoted. And look what happened when City played them early in the season a couple of years ago. Norwich got that win, had no defenders, I don't think. They had like 6 or 7 defensive injuries and managed to get the win. So, we do see some things happen early on. So, yeah, I completely agree. Let's talk about Mahrez then. Mahrez, I'm seeing in quite a lot of Twitter teams. My stance on him is that I'm going absolutely nowhere near him. He kills me every season. But it does look like he's going to play. Foden's out for a prolonged period. Grealish is obviously on the left and the right. Sterling has had a difficult year. I don't think he's going to come straight back in. So I definitely think for the first few weeks, Mahrez will start. Is that your kind of thinking there? You just wanted to get in a kind of nailed-on-ish City player?
100%.
Yeah.
I think Mahrez is a fantastic option. I think a lot of people are saying he's a rotation risk, but
he is a rotation risk. Can confirm.
Well, you say that, but he was only subbed on 4 times last season from like 27 appearances. So he seems like more of a starter than maybe someone that comes on off the bench.
Yeah, but he's at 9 million or 9.5? What is he? Is he 9?
9 million.
At 9 million, having a player who doesn't play. Well, look at your bench. You're saying that like that's a positive. I'd rather have a 30-minute Mahrez than a Amity, not playing, or an Obafemi playing for 11 minutes.
30-minute Mahrez. That sounds like a cook show or something.
I'd watch it, to be fair.
No, in all seriousness, I think Mahrez plays 100% first 5 games, and if not,
first 5. That is a bold claim.
If not, okay, I'll come back to that. If not, plays most of the season for City. The reason why I say that is, can you name me a better player in that right wing position?
Foden. He
normally plays left, or maybe centre mid, or he's incredibly versatile. Mahrez is not versatile.
That's the problem, right? Or what you're saying it like it's a positive. To me, that's always been Mahrez's weakness: the fact that he doesn't fit into different systems. The fact he has to play on that right wing or nothing. And I still think that is Foden's best position on the right, and that's where Pep sees him. So it's those two competing for me.
Okay, I completely get that argument, but the fact that Foden is out for a month or something like that really, really adds credence to Mahrez's starting potential. I mean, Bernardo Silva is probably the other player that can play out there, but he just doesn't have what Mahrez has. And Mahrez has played a whole pre-season. I just really think that he's a strong... we know we can't trust Pep, and he's probably going to bench Mahrez. You just know it. It's just completely illogical. but it'll probably happen. But I think that's the outcome. We have to make decisions that we think are logical, and we have to stick to them. And if they're logical, then why not go for them? So I think Mahrez is a great option, one of the best options, I think, in the entire game for City. Norwich game week 2 is absolutely
I'm going to collect every soundbite of someone saying how great an option Mahrez is, and then play it back to everyone after game week 3 when he's played 1 out of 3 games. No, I do think you have to look at Mahrez with a different lens, I think, this season, given the injuries around players. I mean, where Grealish fits in the team is going to be really interesting, because if Grealish does come in as that number 8 and he's playing in that central position, I think that helps Mahrez. If Grealish does end up on the left, then you've got to think, okay, maybe Sterling's going to switch over to right, and then you've got 3 players there competing for a right wing position. So yeah, I think where Grealish fits is going to be really interesting, and I'm happy to wait a little bit just to kind of see how things fall when City have got all their players back and a strong side. But at the same time, I do get the logic of starting with Mahrez, and if I was going to pick an attacking City player, I think, given how pre-season's gone, I think he would be the one that I'd look to get. Okay, so let's talk about Barnes. You've got Barnes in there. He's in my team as well, like I said. Leicester always start season strongly. They've got a good run of games. I think they've arguably got one of the best games against Wolves at home, who are very gung-ho under their new manager. And I think Barnes is perfectly equipped to counter and break. And we saw the goal he scored in pre-season, where there was a corner, I think, and the ball just fell to him and he just ran from the halfway line and slotted it in. He looks full of confidence, full of energy. Injury worries don't concern me at the moment. Great player, right?
100%. I don't really have any questions about Barnes. He's improving every season. I just briefly looked at some numbers. So in 18-19, he got 4 returns in 16 games. That's 25% goal, 25% return rate. In the subsequent season, got 16 returns in 36 games. That's 44% return rate. And the previous season, the most recent season, he got 14 returns in 25 games. That's 56%. So he's improving every single season. And I just think this season, if he can stay fit, and I guess that's a big if, because he does have his injury worries, poor chap. But I think he's just getting better and better. And this season could be really good for him. I think he's established himself as one of the key men in that Leicester team. And, he even threatens Iheanacho's place if they're going to change shape. So I think if the consensus is he's going to play most games, I think he's a really dangerous option. And Leicester have got a good start to the season. So I think I just think he's a great option.
I think he's a great option. I mean, that seems to be a bit of a theme. You for some reason, Ted, you've got in players who you think are great options. I mean, maybe that's the secret to playing FPL. Shocking. I mean, I like Barnes. I think that there is a bit of a worry, I think, about what system Leicester use, and he's come back from the injury. You've got Iheanacho, who was on the bench for the Community Shield, for example, but scored the penalty. Is Iheanacho going to come in? Does that mean Barnes might drop out? I think we're more likely to see Barnes just maybe getting subbed off sort of fairly early-ish, particularly at the start. So I think we might see a 70-minute, 75-minute Barnes for the first couple of games, but I don't think that's a huge problem given what
I'd rather see that if he can sustain playing every single game. Exactly. Happy with that. 70 minutes, he can do damage.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I'm happy with that. So I won't bother talking about Salah and Rafinha. I think everyone knows kind of, we've touched on those enough over the different team reveals. The big thing for me in midfield, and a few people have mentioned it in the chat, and you know what I'm going to say, surely. No Fernandes, no Sancho, no Greenwood, no Cavani up front, no United attack whatsoever. Just Luke Shaw. Worried about that?
Yes, definitely worried. I really wanted to start the season with Sancho, and I probably would have done if I knew that he'd had more of a pre-season. But I think he's only just back in training now, and he's going to have 1 week to adapt to the way Solskjaer wants to play. I want to keep him on the back burner, and I think I'll bring Sancho in at some point when I see him getting some minutes, because I genuinely think he's going to be a really good asset for Man United. I think so. Solskjaer wants to play 4-3-3 with him. If he's going to change the formation just for one player, it just shows how much he values him. And I think he's a dynamic player. He was number 1 for take-ons in the Bundesliga. That shows that he wants to just get forward and make things happen. And that's the sort of player you want to own in FPL. When you're watching and supporting your player, you just want someone exciting to watch. And I think he could even rival Fernandes for FPL points this season. We don't know how Fernandes is going to change. If the formation changes, if the way the Man United play changes, we don't know how that's going to affect Fernandes. Of course, he's a fantastic player. And I'm not saying I don't want his FPL points. I just think he's such a popular pick. I think it's just probably more fun to go with two other mid-price options to try and beat Fernandes.
I'll remind you of that when Fernandes hits a couple of double-digit hauls and how fun it is when Mahrez gets benched. No, I know what you're saying. I think, it's similar to me and Luke Shaw. I think sometimes you look at players who've got high ownership in lots of teams. You think, can I make a case for going without this player, strengthen my team elsewhere? I think particularly at the start of this season, you've got Salah, who is such a strong captain option in almost every game of the first 7, that it eliminates that. If Salah had kind of a bit of a mixed bag, I'd say you need to have the 2 premiums just to have that option. But like you mentioned, you've got Son there as a potential player that you can alternate with Salah. But I think with this team, I would strongly expect that you're mostly going to go with Salah sort of most weeks as that kind of consistent.
I think I could probably rectify it as well. Sorry to interrupt you. Right. I think you could rectify it by going Son and Mahrez to a KDB, to a Fernandes, and a cheaper midfielder.
Yeah.
So I think you could get to any player you want in 2 moves with this team. The only player that you couldn't do, I think, would be Harry Kane, the most expensive forward. But I think you could probably get away with it if Lukaku's priced at around 11 million. But Harry Kane worries me, but that's partly why I've got Son in my team, just to cover him, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, let's talk about your strikers then. So Ings and Antonio up front, same as me. I've got another one. Who's my other one? Can't remember. Oh, Tony. Yeah, you haven't got Tony. So your Friday night, you're at Fest on Friday, right?
I am.
You are? Yeah. So you're going to be watching that with all the Tony owners, and when he bangs in a brace against Arsenal, you're going to be head in hands. But yeah, Ings is, I've got Ings in my team. You've obviously, I'm guessing you had Watkins and you've swapped him out for Ings. Sort of confident about that? Do you think Ings is going to have a good season?
I think Ings is going to have an excellent season. I think he's in the best shape of his life.
You think he's a good pick then? That seems to be your go-to.
I wouldn't put him in my team if I didn't think he was a good pick. I think, I think 8 million for a Villa side that I know they've lost Grealish, but they've bolstered their ranks with Buendia and Bailey. And I think even if Watkins plays out on the left or in a 2 with Ings, I think Ings is the main man. He even gets on penalties. I know Al Ghazi took one at the weekend, but how often is he going to be on the pitch? I think he's a great option. If he stays fit, that's the big caveat. If he stays fit.
Klaxon again. Ding, 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 ding.
No, exactly. But I mean, you could say a lot about this team. Antonio is equally as injury prone, Barnes. So maybe a bit naive again to pick sort of injury prone players. But I think Ings is just a standout option. I think when we did Tinkers a couple of 2 to 3 weeks ago, there was an abundance of 7.5 options, wasn't there? It was Watkins, Antonio, Iheanacho. You even got Jimenez in game week 4. So I think they've reduced a little bit. Watkins has gone off the radar with the Ings signing, and Iheanacho's place is threatened, of course. We've got Callum Wilson there as well at 7.5. I think Ings is the best option at Villa. I think Villa are still going to be dynamic enough without Grealish, and I think this is his season. Ings is so good. He's probably second best in the league for conversion, small chance conversion for big chance conversion. He's done it consistently over the last 2 or 3 seasons, just as good as Son, I think, just as good. And he's equally as good as converting the difficult opportunities. So if he can be playing every game for Villa, I think he's going to do well.
I think he obviously a lot of money, paid about £30 million for him, but I think a fit Ings is he could play for anyone. If Ings had signed for City as kind of backup striker, or if he'd signed for Spurs as like first choice striker, I wouldn't be surprised. Like I think he's good enough to play for any team in the Premier League. I think it's another statement of intent for Villa to have gone out and signed him, and it's just about keeping him fit. If they keep him fit, you're going to get 20 goal involvements out of him over the season, like without a doubt. 15 goals, maybe 5 assists, something like that. I wouldn't be at all surprised. But we mentioned the injury. I mean, again, I don't want to keep mentioning your bench, but we've kind of covered your team now. So you've got Ings and Antonio, injury risk. You've got Barnes come back from a big injury. You've got Mahrez, possible rotation. Stones, possible rotation. So yeah, just to worry you a little bit more about your lack of bench options and your slight risk in your first 11.
100%. But I mean, you could equally say that about a lot of the template options, like when Diaz had a knock, hasn't he? Didn't play at the weekend. I think in the last week or so, the options that a lot of people have thought were template have now become risks. Calvert-Lewin's had a knock. You're going to have to take some risks at the start of the season.
But isn't that where a slightly better bench would be beneficial?
I want all of these nice players in my starting 11.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? Because like I feel the same. I mean, I've kind of got. I think I've got I've got the Southampton right back. I'm not going to try and pronounce his name. Livermento or something. Yeah. I think he might have the best chance of getting that place kind of long term as the 4 million option. I think I've got a 4-5 defender, and then I've got Gilmore. So, I mean, my bench isn't exactly rocking with superstars, but I think because you're 3-5-2, it limits you that striker spot to being someone quite weak, and then then obviously you've got 2 other 4 million defenders. So yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, you'll be laughing if you don't need to dip into it and you take that risk, and all these players play and do well, and then you're fine. It's just when you do start to pick up some injuries or form. I mean, we've got the international break game week 3, so really they've got to get to that. Really, and then
it's a good point. Really, I think maybe the flexible way I could do this is, I think most of this team is locked in, but I think if I wanted to enhance the bench, I could change Barnes to Tony, and I've got 0.5 to invest in maybe another defender and get a 4.5 mid, and then I think that bench looks much stronger. The problem is I'm just majorly skeptical about Tony.
Are you? I was going to ask about him. Not feeling the Tony love.
I think it's probably a bit stubborn of me because I'm not letting the crowd dictate who I should pick, because he's so well owned in the game. I think he's climbing up to 40% ownership. I think people are getting a little bit carried away, potentially, because there's no doubt that he's going to be good value. I think I was chatting to Luke yesterday.
He's 30%. Just hit 30%.
Just at 30%. Okay, it's still quite a lot, and I think people do like a value pick. But I mean, Luke after the stream yesterday was saying, if he hits 10 goals throughout the season at 6.5 million, he'll be good value.
Yeah,
and he only needs to hit 3 pens and then 7 open play goals, and then that's a decent return for him. I'm just not 100% sure how Brentford are going to adapt to the Premier League, and that's basically a consistent theme throughout this team. I only want players that have proven Premier League experience, and if Tony turns out to be a great option, then I can adapt. But the problem is if he's not a good option in the first 3, the first 5, then it just limits that flexibility because his price probably drops, and the only player I've got to go to is Pukki, who I don't even want either. So I probably would rather have not having him and then maybe move to him probably later on if he just explodes. So
I think it's a very good point. I mean, if we're at Fest and Tony blanks against Arsenal, and a 7 or a 7.5 million, say Watkins gets a couple of goals or something, I think we're going to see a lot of people moving Tony on straight away. I know he's got Palace in the next game, but given he's got that high ownership, I think he needs to get something in that first game to not drop. I mean, I'd stick with him, even if he blanks against Arsenal isn't the easiest game. So I'm not expecting huge things from him. If he blanks again in that game week 2 game against Palace, then I think alarm bells are going to start to be ringing, and then we're going to have to maybe sort of ring the changes. So yeah, I'm not totally opposed to teams without Tony. I think he's a good option. He's going to be the entire source of goals, I think, for that team. There's going to be an over reliance on him. I think in the bigger games, it's going to be a lot easier to mark him and keep the supply getting to him. But I do think Brentford, particularly when they're at home and teams are a bit more expansive and try and attack a bit more, I think Tony's going to maybe see more of the ball and make things happen. Really interested to see how Brentford do. Like I think the optimism about all 3 promoted teams is quite low. Actually, I think probably a lot of people, apart from maybe Palace, I think a lot of people are expecting Watford, Norwich, and Brentford to kind of go straight back down, right?
Yeah, I think that's a really good observation. I think that we don't know. We don't know how they're going. I think there was a lot of excitement about Leeds coming up previous season. We know how they played. And I think a lot of comparisons to be made for Brentford compared to Leeds. But I just don't think that they're going to emulate Leeds to that much of a great extent. So I just remain skeptical about them. I think I watched a lot of the Tony goals from last season, and most of them were tap-ins, and that just stems from the slower pace of the game in the Championship. And I just don't think he's going to get many of those opportunities. He's going to have to adapt to score more difficult efforts, and if he can't do that, then that probably limits his potential. But as you say, he's the talisman in that team. If they can, continue to be flary and adapt well to the Premier League, then he's a good option. I'm a little bit skeptical about starting him.
He's got a hell of an eye for goal. I think that's like you mentioned about the tap-ins. I mean, he's a bit like. I don't know why I always end up making comparisons to Glenn Murray, but I always end up making comparisons to Glenn Murray because I think he was a criminally underrated player. But Glenn Murray, towards the end of his career, he was so good at just ghosting past defenders and getting into areas, and the teammates knew where to find him. So,
I'm saying nothing.
One minute you're marking Glenn Murray, the next he's over your shoulder and the ball's coming in and he's nodded it in. But Tony, I think, has that knack of ability to ghost. Not quite as good as Glenn Murray. No one was quite as good as Glenn Murray, but he has that ability to get into positions where you think you've marked him. You're marking him. He's by your arm. You've got your arm around him, and then the next second he's gone and he's in the box and the ball's come in. So it's going to be all about stopping that supply for teams playing Brentford, and I think it might take a little while for teams to adapt. But I think early on Brentford could start quite strongly. But we'll see. Be interesting.
I might have to cave. I think if I move Barnes to Tony and get a 4.5 bench option in midfield and strength.
Don't let me talk you into anything, Ted. Barnes hat trick. I mean, I'll take that. To be fair,
I think I'm viewing this team with rose tinted spectacles, to be honest, because I think there's a lot of downsides with the bench. I think it is quite weak.
My advice for anyone at the moment is have at least one strong I say strong, at least one bench option that is going to definitely sort of figure. I mean, I've got Ben White. For example, I've got Ben White, Gilmore, and then a 4 million. I mean, if Gilmore comes in, I'm going to get 2-3 points, probably no more. Ben White, I think, is a good shot. I mean, there's a lot of good 4-5 defenders that I think having one of them on your bench is probably the most sensible. I mean, you've got Eiling there, you've got White, you've got the Brighton defenders, Veltman, for example, Webster's going to play. I think there's enough to have to go for at least one, but it's tricky when you've got a team that you really like this, and then you have to take one of them out to be able to strengthen the player who's not even going to play.
Yeah, tricky. I mean, sometimes you have to eat humble pie when you are given a good argument against something, and I think sometimes it's difficult to look at a highly owned player and go, well, I don't really agree with that, so I won't own them. But 30% isn't actually that high in the grand scheme of things. You can still cheer on the player. He's not going to be captained every week, and he's still going to give you a lot of rank boost if you own him. So, yeah, I think this is probably more of a counselling session for me, isn't it?
It is. It feels like it a little bit. Yeah. Basically, it's going to be me talking you into strengthening your bench, and whatever play you take out to do it, it's going to be the one that bangs Gameweek 1. That's just how these things go. We all know. That's why we all hate and love this horrible game. Okay. Oh, I mean, 802 people watching this live, by the way. Great to have you all watching, and hope all your tinkering's going well. There's going to be team reveal every day this week with different people. I've got Joe coming up. I've got Oscar tomorrow. We've got Tom Freeman on Friday, so one of the best managers around. So yeah, look out for those. Final question for you. We've nearly done an hour. Final question for you is, I'm going to be doing a video later with Gianni on Lukaku, Kane. They are the kind of the template busters, right? Because not expected to start game week 1, by around game week 2, game week 3. I'd say probably game week 3. I think we're going to know, well, Lukaku will have signed by then and be a factor. Kane will either be at City or he'll have put his dummy back in his mouth and be, back with the Spurs boys. Do you see those as being big players that are going to shake this up? Do you think the wildcard, for example, might be an option just to make sure you've got one of those players in?
I ideally want to save the wildcard as long as possible. I think we have the African Cup of Nations this year to contend with towards the end of the year, starting in January, and I think there's a possibility of blank and double game weeks, Chelsea being involved in the Club World Cup. So I tend to try and keep the wildcard as long as possible. This is why I want to set my team up for the long term, and that's why I want to be flexible in the likes of having those price points in Son to move to Lukaku if need be. I think the Chelsea fixtures probably don't lend itself to bringing him in straight away, and he's not going to get much of a pre-season. He's probably going to take 2 or 3 weeks to settle into that Chelsea team. And by the end of game week 6, when they've played Liverpool, Spurs and Man City, I think maybe it's probably looking at game week 7 onwards to bring Lukaku in. But then again, you need to be flexible. Kane is the one that really worries me because I'm not sure I can find a way to get him easily.
Would you want him either club?
I think if Kane moves to Man City, he almost becomes a must-have. I think he plays most games for City, but I mean, is it off the cards now? I've read so much in the media that it's probably not going to happen. I think he's...
Well, I thought that. And then I saw Pep did actually quite an open press conference for him where he was quite open about things. And he said, we've submitted this offer for Kane, which was rejected. And sort of unless Spurs want to talk to us, then nothing's going to happen, which made it sound to me that they're still in for him, still want to get him. They need something to happen, a formal transfer request or something to happen from Kane. So I was thinking when they signed Grealish, no way they're going to go out and spend another 130, 140 million on another player. But I'm kind of thinking that this could be something that happens now.
It is worrying. I think if he moves to Man City after the game week 1 deadline, then I'm in deep mud. Let's just say that. So I think I would prefer it if he stayed at Spurs for my own selfish reasons. But
well, at least you can cover him with Son, right? If he moves,
yeah.
Although if he doesn't move, sorry.
Yeah, if he doesn't move. If he moves, then I'm only covering him with Mahrez, who's a rotation risk potentially. But yeah, if he moves to City, then it's a bit of a tricky one, and maybe a wild card is on the cards. But yeah, I think Lukaku I can definitely accommodate, and maybe I just opt for him instead. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the transfer window brings, and keeps everyone on their toes, doesn't it?
Yep. So three more questions for you. I just want one word answers for each. Lukaku at Chelsea, how many goals does he get?
I think Chelsea are on the up, so maybe 20 to 25, I'd
20
say.
25, yep. And Kane at City?
Yeah, I'd probably go 25.
25?
Yeah.
And who wins the league?
Oh, God. Lukaku at Chelsea, Man City. Assuming Kane goes City.
Assuming Kane goes to City, yeah.
Yeah, it's got to be City then. I don't see them. They've got so much strength and depth. Grealish was a good signing.
Do you think it's between those two teams?
As a Liverpool fan, I would definitely argue, definitely no. But Liverpool haven't been very good in the transfer window, so
I've been surprised. I've been surprised, but particularly with losing Wijnaldum. The
problem with Chelsea is that they really struggled with conversion last season, and I'm sure that will improve. But Timo Werner, I don't know, and Havertz not playing false 9. I think they're a good team. I think Mason Mount's an excellent player, but I'm not 100% sure that they have proven that they gel as well as a Liverpool does. But that'll give them some time, and I'm sure that will happen. And maybe Chelsea will be title contenders for sure.
Yep. Ted, thank you so much for joining me, and good luck with your team. I reckon you're going to stick another bench option in there. Be interested to know who you take out. Just a shout out to the members area of Fantasy Football Scout. If you're not a member yet, it's still time to register in terms of the new season. There's 20% off at the moment. Got articles. We've got the transfer planner now, which is going down really well. About 1,000, I think about 1,500 people have already applied for the transfer planner. So if you're a member, you can apply for that. Just go to the members area, look on the left and click on transfer planner. Members video with Mark once a week. Loads of stats, loads of comparisons, player data, all of that stuff. So head over to the site now and sign up. You're joining me, and I will see you again soon.
You're very welcome, mate. Have a good one. I'll speak to you soon.
Be soon. Bye.